What's happening, Boot Junkies? Mike Delgadio here, back with another video on home studio setup for... Oh, man, what? Did I really just... I messed it up. What's happening, Boot Junkies? Mike Delgadio here, back with another video on home studio setup for voiceover. How are you today? I hope all is well. I hope all is well in your world. Today, we're going to talk about this microphone right here. This is the PreSonus PD-70 Dynamic Broadcast Cardioid Pattern Microphone. And the good folks at PreSonus sent this to me for review. So that means in the video it's going to get marked as paid promotion, but all they're doing, they let me keep the microphone, they send it to me, they don't want the microphone back, they're not paying me for this, they just want me to do a review to let you know about this microphone. They don't get any say in what I say. They don't get any editorial input. They don't get to see this before you do. So just want to make sure that you know that. Trying to be as honest as I can. But you know, with me in these videos, I don't really make a recommendation. I just try and let you hear the microphone and let you decide if it's the right microphone for you. We'll talk about the whys and wherefores of this microphone, and we'll compare it to a few other ones. Let's talk about this microphone itself. So this microphone is a dynamic microphone. Dynamic microphones, as opposed to condenser microphones or other kinds of microphones. A dynamic microphone is one that does not require phantom power. And the trade-off for that is it requires a lot of gain. What does that mean? So there's a knob on your interface called the gain knob, and you got to turn it way up in order to get a good usable signal out of it. It's sort of a trade-off that you have. But because of that, they tend to be less sensitive. So they don't have necessarily quite the same range. They may sound, they may not be as crystal clear as the condenser microphones. But the trade-off for that means that they're often better suited to a less than ideal recording environment. So you tend to, because you need to be closer to it, they don't hear things very well from far away. You want to be nice and close to that microphone. They tend to be somewhat more forgiving to less than ideal recording situations. If you're just out in your living room, if you're out recording in your bedroom or in your kitchen or wherever, there may be additional sound that wants to infiltrate into your microphone. And a dynamic microphone can be a little bit more forgiving in that environment because you need to be up close to it, and so it doesn't hear that noise that's from far away. So you can see as I move farther and farther away from that microphone, I really have to raise my voice in order to be heard. And as I get closer and closer to that microphone, I tend to get louder, and so the outside sound tends to get overpowered by the proximity of your voice. So you can use these microphones for a variety of different situations, which is pretty cool. So that's why we want to talk about it. The look of this microphone is very clearly inspired by another microphone that we'll bring in later to do a comparison between the two, but it's the Shure SM7B. As you can see from the look of it, the Shure SM7B is a little bit bigger of a microphone. The PreSonus PD-70 is a little bit smaller, but the capsule, the part that's under the foam here, is actually very reminiscent looking. So the actual construction of the microphone looks very similar between the SM7B and the PD-70. The PD-70 has no buttons, no switches, no anything. It's just a microphone with an XLR cable that comes out the back and goes into the interface. Looking at the technical specifications for the PD-70, I've got it right down here, so we'll look at the technical specifications. It is, as it says, a dynamic microphone. It does have a frequency response of 20 hertz to 20,000 hertz, although you can see from the frequency response diagram that it really does start to taper off quite a bit at probably around 15 to 17,000 hertz. That graph doesn't have a super high resolution to it, but you can see that it falls off quite a bit up above, say, 15,000 hertz, which is pretty typical for a dynamic microphone. You can also see that there's a fairly significant presence boost for the PD-70. The presence boost on the right-hand side of the graph above, say, 4,000 or 5,000 hertz, the microphone has a tendency to accentuate those high frequencies. Can make the microphone sound clear, can add some additional presence or airiness to your voice. very common in microphones, but I do notice that it is quite boosted, almost as it looks to be just shy of 5 decibels. That's quite a bit. It does also seem to naturally want to roll off at about, call it 70 hertz. It starts to roll off the bass. So there's a natural, that's probably why there's no switch in here, because the frequency response just tends to naturally want to roll off some of that lower bass frequency. That's a very common thing in microphones, especially dynamic microphones, where you want to try and overcome the proximity effect, and so that you don't become quite so bassy as you get closer. But you'll be able to hear it as we move closer, as we move farther away. It's a little bit different. Okay, so those are the sort of the main specifications. The last one is the pattern of the microphone. This is a cardioid pattern microphone. Patterns, if you're unfamiliar with them, microphones can have different areas of sensitivity. They're called lobes of sensitivity. And it really depends on how the manufacturer chooses to make that microphone sensitive. And typically, the most common pattern is called the cardioid pattern. And that means from the front of the mic and everything on that side of it, the microphone hears very well. Off to the side and behind the microphone, it tends to hear it less. It's not, the sound isn't invisible, but it tends to hear it less. And it's much more likely to pick up reflections and echoes off the walls behind the microphone. On the sensitive side of the microphone, tends to hear them a bit more. So there's a cardioid pattern. If you think of a heart shape, a cardioid pattern, it shows it from the front of the microphone. It's very sensitive, but then as you move over to the side, it's somewhat less. It is somewhat less sensitive. As I move over to the side of the microphone, you can see it hears it a whole lot less. And then from the back, speaking from the back of the microphone, we should hear that there's very little sound that's picked up. Microphones tend to pick up the bass frequencies still from the back, a lot less of the high. So that's really how the timbre of the microphone changes. Very high frequencies are detected right up front, and as you move off to the side, the high frequencies are the ones that sort of fall away first. So those are the major specifications of the microphone. In the box, there's not much to the box. In the box, you get the microphone, you get the mount, the yoke mount, I think it's called, which is adjustable by loosening the screw. You loosen the screw, and the microphone can move up and down. And then you tighten that screw up in place, and the microphone is locked in position. It is somewhat shock resistant, but you can see as you handle the mic, as you put your hands on the mic, you can get some of those sounds coming into the microphone itself. So as I touch the desk, as I touch the microphone stand, as I touch the microphone itself, you would hear some of that coming in. So it's a microphone that you would still want to try and isolate from the environment, either with a microphone stand, a boom arm, something that might absorb some of those shocks. There's also an adapter, which I don't have in place at the time, a little adapter that will allow you to adapt this microphone to different microphone stands, 5/8 to 3/8. You'll get one of those adapters inside. Other than that, in the box, there really isn't much. You get a little paperwork, and you get some styrofoam. That's it. It does come with this windscreen here. As you can see, the windscreen does come off, and inside you can see that it is very reminiscent of the 7B, but this does come right off. I did some quick experimentation, and so far as I know, I don't know if there are any other accessories that come with the PD-70, but if you do find that you're in a very windy environment, or you do need some additional pop filtering, the Big Puff that comes with the Shure SM7B, or you can get for the Shure SM7B, which is called the A7WS. The A7WS, the Big Puff will fit right on and matches up to the PD-70 just fine. So those capsules, they're essentially the same size, the internals, they're essentially the same size, and the Big Puff fits just fine, which allows you to really get up close to the microphone and be much less likely to send a plosive into the microphone. So sometimes you'll see these if you're recording in an environment where there is a bit more wind, or movement of air, or if you tend to be plosively, plosives, you can use the Big Puff, taking the Big Puff off and putting the PreSonus filter back on. So if you tend to be plosively sending plosives, Peter Piper picked a peck of pickled peppers. If you tend to be plosivy, the other puff can work. Or you can put a pop filter, whatever you want, in front of it. There you go. So now you've had a chance to really listen to the PD-70. Let's put a variety of different microphones up next to it and see how it sounds. Okay, so the first mic that we're going to test to compare is the Samson Q9U, just as a point of comparison with the PD-70. The Q9U is another dynamic microphone. It costs $199, does have some different functionality, has a couple of buttons and switches that may be important to you. But as you can hear, the sound difference is, I think it's a fairly significant sound difference, so you can decide if one is more pleasant to your ear or not. Other features and functionality that the Samson has, it does have a mute functionality. You can just mute the microphone with the touch of a button here. And there's two switches that are reminiscent to some other microphones. First is a mid-range boost. So let's accentuate the mid-range now. So you should be able to hear that this has a mid-range lift. It should sound a bit more mid-rangey. Sometimes that can be important for the situation that you're in. If you need to compete with a music bed or anything like that, you may want to engage that mid presence. Typically, I would do it if I was doing a podcast that I was editing after the fact. I might do that in EQ anyway. So as I said, it's not uncommon for microphones not to have those buttons and switches. So don't make it that there's a inferior quality about it. It's just a choice that the manufacturer makes. But so there's the mid accentuation. Then there's also a bass reduction switch. So now I'm boosting the mid ranges and reducing the bass, just to give a point of comparison here. This one, the bass is naturally rolled off. This one you can roll it off and then roll it off even more. It tends to not be very bassy to begin with, but you can roll off even more of that bass. Let me just turn off the mid-range boost, and now you can hear it with just the high-pass filter, just with the bass rolled off, just as a point of comparison, just so you can hear the difference between these two microphones. I'll also get right up close. This is a proximity test for the Q9U, and this is the proximity test for the PD-70. So that is a comparison, a side-by-side, with the Samson Q9U. Let's see what else we've got. Okay, next we've got the Lewitt MTP 550 dynamic microphone, the MTP 550DM. Okay, so next, another microphone that I've got in the booth here is a comparison of the PD-70 with the Lewitt MTP 550DM dynamic handheld microphone. You can see the form factor is a little bit different on these. The MTP 550 is designed to be held in hand, so like you're on stage, whereas the PD-70 is really more of a broadcast microphone. It's designed to be in a stand with your hands not on it. But they are both dynamic microphones. They're both cardioid microphones, and they are very proximate in price, so very similar from a price point. The Lewitt is $119 at the time I'm making the video, and the PreSonus is $129 at the time I'm making the video. So you can hear if there's any sort of difference. If you find one to be more pleasing than the other, you can decide between these. If these were on your radar, you can get a sense of how they sound different compared to each other. The Lewitt does also come with a clown nose. So you can put a clown nose in front of it. And the little clown noses, pop filters, the clown nose can take away a little bit of the high resolution, the highest frequencies. It can take away a bit of the highest frequencies, especially, just because there's so much foam in front of it. They can take a little bit away from the high frequencies. And so you can see how the proximity effect is. And you can also see that as we pull it away, do we get any additional clarity? I think typically you do find that there's a little bit of change in the high frequency response. So we'll We'll just pull this off here just for a sake of comparison. But as you can see, this is meant to have the pop filter off. This one is meant to have the pop filter on. Okay, so we're going to put this back on. And that's the Lewitt MTP 550 DM dynamic microphone from Lewitt. All right, let's put another microphone in the booth here. Let's see what else we got. Okay, next, now we've got a Shure SM58 in comparison for the PD-70, just so you can get a sense of how they may be similar, how they may be different. Now, the SM58, I'm going to do that a lot. The SM58 is about $99, a little bit less expensive than the PD-70, but you'll be able to see. Maybe they sound the same, maybe they sound different. I don't know. It's up to you to decide. We can test the proximity effect. We'll get right up next to the PD-70, and we'll get right up on the SM58, and you'll be able to tell if there's any difference. Again, the SM58 is designed to be a stage, meant to be held in the hand, whereas this is much more of a broadcast microphone meant to be held in a stand. You really don't, it's not designed to have your hands on it. But you may find that there's a difference in sound as you move back and forth between them. In both cases, these are microphones that you tend to be very, very close to. You don't want to be necessarily a foot or even more away. You want to be right up on these microphones. So this is the Shure SM58 handheld microphone. Another one in the same sort of price point. Okay, let's do another one. Okay, one more microphone, one more handheld microphone before we move on to the couple of different broadcast dynamics that I have. This is the Movo HV-M5 handheld dynamic microphone, and it's fairly less expensive. This is about $79 to the $129 of the PD-70. So again, this one's meant to be held in the hand. This one's meant to be held in the hand. Sort of a, no frills. The only button and switch that's on here is this one does have an on and off switch. So similar to a mute switch, you can switch it on and off. I do find that this is it does have a fair bit of handling noise for a handheld microphone, but you'll be able to at least get a sense of how they differ sound-wise. If they differ sound-wise, if you find one more pleasant than the other, it's really for your ears. But anyway, this is an example of the Movo HV-M5. This has been the Movo HV-M5 handheld dynamic microphone. Okay, let's do a few broadcast microphones just to see how they pair up. So now we're going to test the Shure SM7B. We're going to compare it to the PD-70 to see if there really is a difference. It's very clearly visually inspired by the 7B, the PD-70, but tonality-wise, it's up to you. You can decide which one sounds better. Now, bear in mind that the SM7B is more than double the cost. So $129 for the PD-70, about $399 when I last checked for the SM7B. So a very considerable difference in price. But they do look very much the same. They're very, very similar. What's different is the body here. And I will say that the PD-70 is constructed extremely well. It's very durable, very heavy microphone. It really feels like it's got, some brawn to it. It's not going to fall apart in your hand. It's a very sturdy microphone. But you can see visually, very, very similar. Very similar. Okay, there are some switches on the back of the 7B, so we're going to adjust them just so you can get a sense of what it sounds like. Okay, first we're going to engage the bass roll-off, the high pass filter for the microphone. So this will cut some of the bass response out of the 7B, again, for the proximity effect, and and also to take away any sort of rumble that might be out in the world. So if you are using this on location, outside of a booth, outside of a studio, in your bedroom, something like that, it will help minimize traffic. It will help minimize, air conditioning noise and so forth. So that's the low pass filter. There's another switch for increased presence on the SM7B. So let's engage that now. So now I've got both modes engaged on the 7B. So I'm rolling off the bass, but I'm adding some presence to the 7B, which will make it sound a bit brighter. It should sound more trebly, for lack of a word. You'd say it adds some presence to the microphone, adds some clarity, adds some airiness to the voice, can make it a little bit easier to be heard over music or things like that. Can cut through a little bit more. But generally, it makes for you to sound more present, more nearby, and just generally clearer. Sometimes dynamic microphones can sound a little veiled, so by having that presence boost, you can get some clarity. Now, let's just turn off the high pass filter. And so now we've got the presence boost and the low pass filter is off. So now these two microphones, the response curve should be fairly similar between the two. I don't know if they're going to sound alike, but the actual frequency response between the two microphones should be fairly similar, with the SM7B presence boosted matching that presence boost that's already built into the PD-70, with the bass filter disengaged, so it's just going to naturally roll off that bass, which is sort of how the PD-70 is already set up. I don't think they're going to be identical by any stretch, but I'm trying to at least give you a sense of how they compare. So this has been the Shure SM7B compared to the PD-70. All right, we have one more microphone in the booth. Let's check it out. Okay, last microphone that we'll put as a comparison to the PD-70, just so you get a sense or reference for it. This is the Electro Voice RE20, another extremely common, extremely popular, venerable dynamic broadcast microphone. Same pattern, cardioid pattern, but this is the Electro Voice RE20. Again, this is similar in price to the SM7B. At the time I looked at it, it's about $399 for this microphone. I've seen it go as high as $499 at times. But $399 is, significantly more expensive than the $129 for the PD-70. The RE20 does have one switch on it, which is the high-pass filter, which I will engage now. So this is the high-pass filter, again, taking away some of that bass so that the proximity effect really doesn't come into play. Although with the RE20, one of the things that Electro Voice says, let me put that back. One of the things that Electro Voice says about the RE20 is by the design of the microphone, these slots here on the microphone, you really should not get much in the way of proximity effect as you get closer and closer to the microphone, because the way they've designed it, it should not display much proximity effect. It's sort of inherent in the microphone. One of my favorites. This is if for me, I think this is the one that sounds most flattering for my voice. It's the one I typically go to first when I need a dynamic microphone. But I do want to, I recognize it's a very expensive microphone by comparison. So if you're looking for a microphone that can perform, can look good, can sound good, you can decide if the PD-70 is right for you. So overall, my impressions of it are you'll be the judge of the sound. All I want to say is the handling and the robustness of the PD-70 was actually quite a surprise. At its price point, it is really built like a truck. It seems very, very solid. It's weighty in the hand. It looks like it's built to last. That's what I'm going to say about it. I don't know if it's built to last because I've only had it for a month or so. But just, the sense that you get from the microphone is it's meant to be in it for the long haul. I'll let you decide if you think it sounds right. I'll let you see how you think it compares to the other microphones. But I wanted to at least give you a sense of where it fits amongst the range of dynamic microphones, at least the ones that I have, starting from $79 going all the way up to $500, and you can or $400, and that will let you decide if you think the PD-70 is a microphone that might be right for you. Big thank you to the folks over at PreSonus for sharing this microphone with me and allowing me to review it with you. I hope you found this helpful. I hope. That's all I can do is hope that you found it helpful. Let me know what you think in the comments, and that's it. That's all I have for you today. Now go get yourself a microphone, maybe a nice little broadcast dynamic microphone, but get yourself a microphone so you can get out there and record something amazing. Thanks. We'll talk to you next time. Take care.